I never intended to reveal the truth. For years, I let them believe I was drifting, unambitious, underachieving, stuck in some dead-end job. But life has its own timing, and sometimes it picks the most ironic moment to speak the loudest. The annual Whitaker family barbecue was in full swing, drenched in early autumn sun and the scent of mesquite smoke and superiority. We were gathered at my parents' ranch-style home just outside Tulsa, freshly mowed lawn, string lights over the patio, and the usual lineup of folding chairs filled with relatives who always had something to say. "Oh, look, it's Delaney," my mother called out, her voice coated in passive disappointment. I walked in carrying a bowl of roasted veggie couscous, already bracing for the judgment. "You still doing that receptionist thing, honey?" she asked, her pearl earrings catching the light. "Executive coordinator," I replied evenly. "At Valiant Group." I wore jeans and a plain blue top, understated, comfortable. At 34, I'd perfected the art of invisibility. My cousin Brooke glided past, high heels clicking, her freshly curled hair bouncing with every step. "I just got back from the Velon NYC pitch," she declared, flashing her VP of Sales badge like a trophy. "Their CEO loved my numbers." I almost laughed. She had no idea she was bragging about impressing me. 3 years earlier, I'd quietly acquired majority ownership of Valion Group through a carefully structured investment deal. The CEO she referred to, Marcus Lynn, reported directly to me. But no one in my family knew that. They still thought I was struggling, floundering, stuck. And I let them think that. No pressure, no expectations, no awkward requests for money or favors. "Delaney," Aunt Ruth slurred, swaying slightly as she approached with a third glass of sangria, "you ever think about going back to school? Get out of that phone answering rut?" I had 2 MBAs and a doctorate in organizational leadership. But I just smiled. "Maybe someday," I said, sipping my sparkling water, already planning Monday's board meeting, one where Brooke would present again, this time to me. Quiet power, it tastes sweeter than any barbecue sauce. "I'm comfortable where I am, Aunt Ruth," I said evenly. "That's your problem," my father chimed in, balancing a burger on a paper plate. "No ambition. Your sister's already making 6 figures and you're still filing papers." I took a slow breath. "I made 8 figures last year, Dad." Brooke beamed under the attention. "Actually, we've got a huge company meeting next week. The CEO is finally showing up in person. Everyone's buzzing." Yes, they were, because I had finally decided it was time to step out of the shadows at Valiant Group. Under my leadership, the company had doubled its global reach. Until now, I'd led from behind the curtain, using proxies and private channels, but the time had come for a more visible role. "Will you even get to see the CEO, Delaney?" my mother asked sweetly, lacing her tone with doubt. "I mean, from your little cubicle?" Before I could reply, a sleek black Tesla pulled into the driveway. My heart gave a sharp jolt. I knew that car. Marcus Lynn stepped out, Brooke's direct supervisor and one of the very few who knew my true identity. He looked perfectly at ease in tailored weekend wear, likely worth more than my family's patio furniture combined. Brooke immediately perked up, adjusting her posture. "Oh my God, that's my boss. What's he doing here?" Marcus's gaze scanned the backyard until he found me. A wide smile spread across his face. "Mrs. Whitaker," he called, heading toward me. "Didn't expect to find you out here today." My dad's burger slipped from his hand, splattering on the lawn. My mother gasped, her wineglass shattering against the stone patio. The entire party froze. I stood, smoothing my plain top and jeans. "Marcus," I said, my voice calm, "welcome to our family barbecue." Silence settled like fog. The years of pretending had evaporated in seconds. Brooke's voice cracked as she spoke. "You're the CEO? That's impossible. You're just a coordinator." I met her gaze. "Actually, Brooke, I'm your boss. I own Valiant Group. Have for 3 years." My father's face flushed an alarming shade of crimson. "Is this some kind of joke?" Marcus stepped forward, eyes steady. "No joke, sir. She's the real deal." And just like that, the narrative changed. Oh, it's no joke, sir, Marcus said, stepping forward with a calm authority. Your daughter is one of the most strategic and visionary CEOs I've ever worked with. Valiant Group has tripled in value since she took over. My mother staggered back into a patio chair. But you bring couscous salad to family gatherings. You live in that tiny rental. You wear clothes from Target. I lifted my chin, allowing just a sliver of my true self to surface. I choose to live simply, Mom. It doesn't mean I have to. Gasps and murmurs spread like fire through the backyard. Aunt Ruth was already on her phone, frantically typing. Uncle Charlie choked on his beer. And Brooke, poor Brooke, looked ready to collapse. Marcus shifted, suddenly aware that he'd just blown open a well-kept secret. Apologies, Ms. Whitaker. I saw the address in Valiant's legacy files. I thought I'd stop by to discuss the Morgan acquisition in person. Before I could reply, Brooke erupted. This is insane. I've spent 3 years busting my ass at that company, clawing my way up, while you sat there watching me fail. Judging me? I met her glare with a steady look. No, Brooke, I've been running the company. Every raise, promotion, and performance review you received, or didn't, was earned, including the times you took credit for your team's work. Her face turned crimson. Everyone knew Brooke had a habit of stealing credit. She'd been doing it since we were kids. You're lying, Dad barked, his voice thick with denial. Delaney, she can't even pick paint colors without asking her mother. I swallowed the familiar sting and straightened. Would you like to see my tax returns, Dad? Or Valiant's board filings? I'm sure Aunt Ruth has already pulled up 6 press releases. Sure enough, Aunt Ruth's jaw dropped. Valiant Group, valued at over $700 million, 0 cents. My mother finally found her voice. But why? Why pretend to be less? I looked at them, all the people who had spent years dismissing me, because if I had told you, would you have believed me? Their silence was answer enough. If you've ever been underestimated by the people closest to you, hit subscribe, because in the next chapter, Delaney's quiet power is about to turn the whole family legacy upside down. Marcus shifted awkwardly, clearly aware he was witnessing something far more intimate than a boardroom confrontation. Perhaps I should come back another time. No, I said firmly, stay. We might as well get it all out now. I turned back to the family, whose silence now screamed louder than their past jabs ever had. I kept my success private because I wanted to grow on my own terms, without managing your expectations, demands, or opinions. But more than that, how you treated me when you thought I was just an assistant told me everything I needed to know. Brooke's husband, Darren, who had been quietly observing from behind the grill, suddenly spoke. Wait, if you're that Whitaker, that means— Yes, I confirmed, meeting his gaze. I'm the one who denied your request for a dedicated office last quarter. Valiant doesn't allocate corner suites to mid-level managers. A ripple of laughter spread through the backyard. Brooke's face drained of color. I assume this Morgan acquisition is about the merger rumors? My Uncle Charlie, a retired attorney, asked. I nodded politely. That's confidential corporate information. Then I turned to Brooke. And that raise you've been bragging about? Not happening. You can't just do that, she snapped. That's discrimination. Brooke, I can. Your last 3 campaigns were over budget. Your team has the highest turnover in the division, and your original pitch last month mirrored our competitor's ad from 2021, almost word for word. He shrank under the weight of it. I may be your sister, I added, but at Valiant I'm your CEO, and unlike this family, we reward merit, not favoritism. My mother dropped into a chair, fanning herself like she might faint. All this time, the things we said. Yes, I said, cutting her off. The judgment, the snide remarks, the kids' table, the looks, I remember all of it. I stood taller in my simple Target dress, and I rose anyway. The silence was absolute, stunned, regretful, raw. Then Marcus cleared his throat. For what it's worth, your daughter has built one of the most admired companies in our industry. Our retention rates are top tier, our profit margins are unmatched, and our leadership model is studied at Stanford and Wharton. Speaking of business, I said, reaching into my minimalist leather tote and pulling out an envelope, I have something for you, Dad. His fingers shook slightly as he unfolded the document inside. A property deed, specifically for the very backyard we stood in. The place where I'd been dismissed, sidelined, and underestimated for years. The mortgage you've been struggling with? I said softly. It's paid off. He stared at the paper like it might catch fire in his hands. Consider it repayment, I continued, for all the investments you didn't make in me. Aunt Ruth choked on her sangria. Uncle Charlie fumbled his phone, sending it skittering across the patio. Brooke looked like she'd finally lost consciousness, if only briefly. I turned to Marcus and let my voice shift, confident, crisp, corporate. Now, about the Morgan acquisition. Shall we discuss it over dinner? I know a place, no family ownership involved. As we walked toward his Tesla, silence trailed behind us like smoke. Then, from the patio, my mother's fragile voice called out, "But what about the barbecue?" I looked back one last time. Paper plates abandoned, potato salad untouched. Frozen expressions, mid-realization. I think we're done here, I said. I've got a company to run. Oh, and Brooke, I added just loud enough, don't be late for Monday's meeting. We're announcing some restructuring. In the car, Marcus glanced over. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to detonate that like I did. I laughed, really laughed, deep from the chest. Don't apologize, I said. Some truths need explosions. Will you be okay? I looked out the window, watching the house recede into the dusk. Years of quiet, of diminishing. Now? I've never been better. The next week, I walked into Valian's downtown headquarters, not in my quiet blouse and jeans, but a tailored charcoal suit that made people turn. Madison. Brooke stood outside my office, her badge already updated for her transfer to a smaller satellite location. Sometimes leadership meant tough calls. Sometimes it meant justice. I took my seat, glanced at the old family photo in my drawer, a younger me, smiling softly at the edge. And I smiled again, because I wasn't on the sidelines anymore. I stared at the old family photo one last time. Me, age 22, already learning to shrink myself to become background noise in my own story. I slipped the photo out of the frame and fed it to the shredder. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. Running executive strategy meetings, approving international contracts, finalizing our next acquisition. The secretary I'd pretended to be was gone. The CEO I'd always been had a company to lead. Somewhere across Tulsa, my family was still piecing together their rewritten reality. The disappointment they pitied had become the powerhouse they never saw coming. But I didn't need their applause. I'd stopped chasing it the day I bought my first firm. They were only catching up now. Success, I'd learned, doesn't need an audience. It needs conviction. And, sometimes, a barbecue bombshell. In the weeks after, my phone buzzed nonstop. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years rediscovered our close bond. Aunt Ruth called with a pitch for her son's eco-lawn care startup. Uncle Charlie wanted to glance over our corporate contracts. Even Mom's bridge friends started showing up at Valiant's front desk, claiming to be lifelong family friends. I instructed security to turn them all away. The most bizarre transformation came from my parents. My mother started popping in with homemade lunches, trying to erase decades with turkey on rye and forced sentimentality. I just don't understand why you couldn't tell us, she whispered one day, rearranging framed photos she brought from my office. I threw them away as soon as she left. Remember my college graduation? I'd asked, when Brooke got a car for making Dean's List and I got a lecture for wasting time on finance classes instead of finding a husband. She turned red. We just wanted what was best for you. No, I corrected gently. You wanted what looked best to everyone else. Dad had a different tactic, mailing me clippings about Valiant, every article circled, each note signed, my daughter did this, that's my girl. the same daughter he once called directionless. Brooke's situation was trickier. After her reassignment, she filed a formal complaint. Familial bias, she claimed. HR, unaware of our connection, launched a full investigation. Results weren't what she expected. Because Merritt always tells the truth. Taking credit for her team's work, manipulating timesheets, and using company funds for personal projects. The findings were serious enough that rather than fire her outright, I gave her a choice: resign with a clean reference, or face a very public termination and a permanent stain on her record. She showed up the next morning with red eyes and a shaky voice. "You're ruining my life," Brooke snapped, mascara streaking down her face. "After everything I've done for this company?" I stayed calm. "You mean the Johnson campaign your assistant designed while you took the credit? Or maybe the expense reports you doctored to cover your personal spa visits? That's standard practice." "No, Brooke, that's fraud." I slid a folder across the desk. "Here's your resignation. I've already signed a reference letter stating you left voluntarily. It's more than you deserve. But despite everything, you're still my sister." Her hands trembled as she grabbed the folder. "You think you're perfect now, don't you? The big boss finally better than the rest of us?" "No," I said softly. "I think I'm finally done letting this family decide what I'm worth." Later that evening, I received a barrage of texts from my parents, demanding I fix things with Brooke. I replied with screenshots from the investigation and a single message. Would you prefer I press charges? The silence that followed was deafening. But change rippled outward. I restructured the entire marketing department, elevated overlooked talent, and implemented a new performance review system. Valiant didn't grow through nepotism, and it never would. 6 months later, I walked into Thanksgiving at my parents' house. This time, I arrived in my own Tesla, dressed not to blend in, but to reflect who I really was. The shift in the room was almost comical. Relatives who once overlooked me now clung to every word. Aunt Ruth gushed to guests about her CEO niece. Uncle Charlie had laminated a Wall Street Journal article about Velan for the mantle. Brooke wasn't there. I had heard she was doing well at a smaller firm. Finally, relying on merit, not bloodlines. At dinner, my mother raised her glass. To Delaney, who reminded us that success doesn't always look how we expect it to. I lifted mine in return, and to authenticity, which matters more than appearances. Later, as I left, my father stopped me. His voice was quiet, uncertain. I was wrong. About everything. I nodded. I accepted his words. But forgiveness takes time. That Monday, as my assistant buzzed in, "Your mom's here with lunch," I smiled. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." In the window's reflection, I saw not the girl they underestimated, but the woman I'd become. No longer hiding. Just me. Unapologetically. On my desk sat a new photo. Not of family, but of my executive team, taken at our last charity event. These were the people who saw me for who I really was. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you weren't enough, I see you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, or share your own story. I read them, and trust me, it matters. Hit subscribe if you believe that quiet strength deserves a spotlight. And here's my advice. Never shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone. Your worth isn't up for debate, and your success doesn't need permission. Build quietly if you must, but build anyway. Because one day, they'll stop seeing who they thought you were and start recognizing who you've become. That moment, it's everything.